It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith, and you guys got the Brandon Rosside good intro, so you guys know what's happening. Alan Saunders back in the fold, riding shotgun with me. Alan, what's going on?
That's true. Brandon and I are kind of a package deal. You only get him if you're getting me, which I don't know if that's a good thing. It's a good thing for me. I don't know if that's a good thing for Brandon or not, because it depends on how much you like me. I assume if you're here, you at least don't hate me, although we do have some regular haters in the comments, so I'm fine. I'm sure those comments are celebrating today, right? The regular haters.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, Alan, I'm surprised you showed up today. It's got to be a tough day for you as a Pitt alum and Kenny Pickett apologist to even show your face on this podcast right now.
I am not a Pitt alum. I went to college and IUP, and I'm not apologist is the wrong word. I think that people have gone a little bit too far in how bad Kenny Pickett was, but I think the people that matter have made their opinion felt. And I think that's the real story here, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers traded Kenny Pickett because the Pittsburgh Steelers, the players, didn't want him here no more. I mean, didn't want him to be the starting quarterback. Like that's the real thing that happened, that caused this. We've sort of been seeing that percolate from a few areas since the end of the season. Obviously, Deontay Johnson was pretty vocal about it. But I think today, really, when you hear Russell Wilson saying, "Oh yeah, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, and Minkah Fitzpatrick called me to recruit me to the Pittsburgh Steelers." Mm-hmm. That's telling you that it didn't matter that Russell Wilson is old and likely to not be very good. It didn't matter that Russell Wilson is only on a one-year deal. That the Steelers team was not going to get behind Kenny Pickett getting another shot. I actually think the front office, Omar, Mike T, were being sincere when they said, "We think he'll be a lot better with Arthur Smith." Like, I think they believed what they said. I think their intention as of this week was to hold a competition between Russell Wilson and Kenny Pickett to be starting quarterback. But it's the lack of faith of the team in Kenny Pickett and the fact that they didn't want him, they wanted somebody else, I think is the real reason that you're seeing Kenny Pickett ask to be traded, and for the Steelers to agree to that request, even though they got what amounts to nothing for a guy who 2 years ago was the number 20 overall pick.
So let's talk about the trade itself real quick. The trade terms: Steelers get pick 98 this year, as well as two 2025 7th-round picks. The Eagles get Kenny Pickett, of course, as well as pick 120 this year. I don't remember exactly, without looking at it, what the trade was for Sam Howell, but in this tweet, Adam Schefter said it's about the same value. And I thought I saw somebody else say it basically works out to a 4th-round pick when you talk about the 3rd and 2 7ths for Kenny and a 4th.
Yeah, it's basically Kenny for a 4th.
Yeah.
2 7ths now is worth nothing. But
yeah. Let me ask you this, though, because the name that you brought up there was Deontay Johnson. And obviously it doesn't matter. Deontay Johnson is gone. But if Kenny Pickett was going to be traded and we knew that this was going to be the case, could it have possibly worked out for Deontay Johnson to be part of the fold in 2024?
No, I don't think that was the reason that the Steelers moved on from Deontay Johnson. I think the Steelers had decided they weren't going to re-sign Deontay Johnson beyond this season. One of the reasons that they didn't want to sign him beyond this season is that he's kind of been I don't know what the right word to use is, pain in the butt off the field lately. Among those was saying out loud that he preferred me. I don't think the Steelers are mad about his preference. I think they're mad about the way he said it, right? And the sort of strife that kind of stuff causes when people say things publicly, and just a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Like fight with Mitch Trubisky, argument with Minkah Fitzpatrick, the fumble thing. Like, there was a lot of stuff there was a lot of baggage. That's the right word. A lot of baggage around Deontay Johnson that was the reason that he got traded. But I mean, like, look, it's very clear that this was not the Steelers' plan to do this. This was a request as a reaction to what has happened over the last few days from Kenny Pickett, and the Steelers agreed to go along with it. But it's very fair to speculate that what Omar Khan has done in the last 5 days, it's only been 5 days. 5 days. Wow. Feels like a month.
And you got like 3 hours of sleep last night. So like it's fair that you don't know how long it's been. Do you know what day it is?
No. Days no longer have meaning. But okay, in the last, it's very fair to suggest that Omar Khan would have done things differently over the last 5 days if he knew he was trading Kenny Pickett. Very, very fair. It's also very fair that if starting at the end of the season, Omar Khan knew he was trading Kenny Pickett. In fact, I'll go beyond very fair. I will guarantee that if he knew starting at the end of the season that he was trading Kenny Pickett, he would have been able to get more for him than what he did right now. This was the market's gone, right? People are moving quarterbacks. Things are changed. Half of the available quarterback, 2/3 of the available quarterbacks have already found landing spots. They could have made this trade, and some team could have gotten what they were looking for ahead of the free agent market instead of waiting. Like the price a week ago would have been significantly better.
I wonder if, like, the Vikings, as opposed to signing Sam Darnold, maybe I don't know. I mean, there's instances out there where, like you're saying, like I can't find a perfect landing spot off the top of my head.
I think Arizona would have preferred him to Desmond Ridder.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Hey, and the Steelers could have gotten, not saying like Rondale Moore is like a world beater, but they could have gotten a weapon out of that trade then, if they would have been willing to offer the same deal for Pickett as opposed to Ridder.
Yeah.
Would have been interesting.
I think they. I mean, do you think the Jags would have preferred him to Mac Jones? So I don't know what did they get?
I thought a sixth.
Yeah, so they didn't get much. But like, do you think they would have paid more to get Pickett instead of Jones? Maybe.
There's more of a question. Like, there's less tape out on him. Like it's which works in the benefit in this case. But Alan, there's a lot of stuff out there. So, people are going to believe what they want to believe, hear what they want to hear, and see what they want to see. But, what is your take on how exactly we got to this point, going back to, last season into the offseason to today, where Kenny Pickett was traded?
So, yeah, I think let's start with, we've talked on this podcast a lot about the Steelers deciding in the middle of last season that they thought that the problem was Matt Canada and not Kenny Pickett. They had two players. One had been a first-round pick and a former NFL starter. Another one who had started a bunch of games for them, and Mason Rudolph on their roster that were legitimate starting options. It's not like they had scrubs or nobody's there. And they decided that it was not Kenny Pickett, that it was Matt Canada that was the problem. And I think that decision at that time made a lot of sense. But after Pickett got hurt, if Kenny Pickett never hurts his ankle, does any of this happen? That's the
domino effect, man.
Those, what do they call that? Like butterfly effect, right? Kenny Pickett doesn't hurt his ankle, there's nearly 100% chance he's still the team starting quarterback.
Now you got me thinking about different effects. What's the Mandela effect?
That's the one where you think something is true, but it's not. I don't know why.
Okay.
It's all
right. Well,
yeah, but and so, but this process starts when the Steelers finally turn to Mason Rudolph, who, it was very clear that Mike Tomlin did not want to play and did not think would be very good, because he would have played him before then ever, and not actively attempted to replace him on the roster in 3 consecutive off seasons if he liked him or wanted him to play. Mike Tomlin was no lover of Mason Rudolph, but when he played, and he played well, and the team played well with him and around him and for him, there was a Rubicon crossed there, I think, in a lot of ways in the locker room, where the Steelers were like, we know this guy ain't that good, but look what we're capable of with him that we were not doing with Kenny Pickett. in terms of the team. And then look, this is speculation, right? I don't know, but I feel like the handling of the situation in Seattle, where Kenny Pickett didn't want to be the third quarterback and there was drama around it, probably didn't help. And then you have, this offseason where, it's been pretty clear when you've heard from guys in the locker room that their preference was not to have Kenny Pickett, whether they said it with their own words or they said it with their actions. And then, who's going to start? Is it going to be a competition? We said it was pretty clear the Steelers had at least, given Russell Wilson a pretty good indication that he was going to be the starter, or at the very least have the first chance to be the starter. And I don't, did not wanting to compete for the job play into it? I don't know. You can't be an NFL quarterback with an 82 career passer rating and demand to not compete for a starting job. That just doesn't track. Like, it's not like he's going to another place where he's not going. He's got to compete for a backup job in Philadelphia. He's not even the clear number 2 then, right? Like, and so I have a hard time believing it is just that idea of competition. He is clearly farther from an NFL starting quarterback job in Philly, where they have a young, not star, but certainly starter capable quarterback set up for the long term. Russell Wilson's here on a 1-year veteran minimum deal. There is not a more tenuous starting quarterback situation in the entire NFL than Pittsburgh's right now. There's no place where it's better to be a backup than in Pittsburgh right now. Like, it really doesn't get any better than having a 35-year-old quarterback on a veteran minimum deal as the starter. Like, you can't ask for a better situation to be a young quarterback looking for an opportunity. It clearly was not all about opportunity. And whether you compete for the job or you're first or you're second, like, I guess that could matter, but I have a hard time believing that is the root cause of this trade. I firmly believe it is because of that lack of faith from the rest of the team, leading Pickett to believe that he was never going to get that chance, even if he earned it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because what you said was the part that, like, really didn't track to me was, I don't want to be, a second fiddle here if Russell Wilson is going to be the one, but I'll be the second fiddle in a place like Philly. Not that he chose to go to Philly, but really, like you said, there was no situation that he could have been traded to and felt like he was going to get a better opportunity to start, whether it's from day one or whatever. If he was the 1B to Russell Wilson's 1A in a competition, it's hard for me to fathom the idea that he wanted out of here and then lands in a better situation. Like, I don't know in his head what he thought was going to happen from a trade request.
I mean, back to his hometown team he grew up rooting for, seems like a good, as good a fit as possible. But yeah, I mean, look, this was what was going to happen. If Kenny Pickett got traded from the Steelers, he was going to go up to a place where he had a less of a chance to be the starting quarterback this year. There's no other team where he would have had a greater chance. So that's why I don't buy the focus on this competition thing, because he's putting himself in a worse spot. Like, it's all about the lack of connection, faith, trust, feeling that this team wanted him, that this locker room wanted him to be their guy. And that's why he's gone. Like, the competition thing is a red herring.
Let me ask you this then, because looking at the situation and where we're at now, from Kenny's point of view, and did you see this coming? I guess is the best way to ask this. Like, we thought maybe it would be a possibility, or at least I did, when Russell Wilson signed. We're like, how is, what's the reaction going to be? But I thought it was going to be more of a down the line thing. Like, if he doesn't win the job, how is Kenny Pickett going to react? For it happening at this point in the spring, did you see this coming when Russell Wilson was, whatever that was, last Thursday or whatever, that it came out that the Steelers were signing him?
So I definitely did not see it coming into this offseason, right? Like I said all along that I thought Pickett would be one of the primary, like I thought we were going into the season with Kenny Pickett competing with a veteran quarterback to be the starter. I said that 100 times on this podcast. Like that was what looked to be the Steelers' plan, and it was the Steelers' plan all along. And there's no, so that was the plan. But there's nothing here that tells me that that they're looking at something else anywhere else in this process, right? I mean, they didn't talk to the quarterbacks after the Senior Bowl. Like they're not out there at pro days looking at guys like Penix and Nix, and like this is not a team that's looking like it wanted another quarterback. Like all their actions fit, right? It's not just that they said that they wanted to have a competition with Kenny Pickett as the starter. Like all their actions fit. So I believe that is what they wanted. And so I didn't see him not being here at all. And even after Russell Wilson was traded here, I did at that point, or not traded, but signed here, I thought at that point, okay, it becomes real, right? Or he could ask for a trade. But again, like we just talked about, like it didn't make sense if you only look at what is best for Kenny Pickett, right? If you just try to do the evaluation of like, oh, what would be in his best interests? Well, it's to be here, right? It's this is still going to be the best shot he's got, even with Russell Wilson standing in his way. So I thought it was possible that he might ask for a trade, but I probably didn't put a lot of stock into it because I was analyzing it from that lens. And I think that was wrong. The big picture here is what ended up being important. And I think when I heard what Russell Wilson said during his press conference today, then I was sure this was happening. That's when everything just sort of clicked and said, oh, it's never like when Russell Wilson said that those three guys called him and basically begged him to come be their quarterback. At that moment, it was 100% clear that Kenny Pickett was never going to be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I was in a X space on Monday talking about the situation, and there was no like knowledge or anything of it, but I predicted that Kenny Pickett was going to request a trade at that point. And it's kind of a situation, at least to me, where I'm trying to find like a way to, like an analogy here, like in a workplace, if you kind of feel slighted by something to the point where you're like, I quit, I'm going to find a job somewhere else, but then that job pays less or it's a lesser role. That is what I would, put this into perspective and look at it similarly, like, because again, Kenny's not going to a better football situation for himself right now by going to Philly. He might feel like he was disrespected in Pittsburgh to the point where he had to get out. If he did request a trade just simply for that reason, like you said, though, you think it's more of a situation where there was just a lack of faith, from the roster. But I don't know.
That's what makes it, that brings the convergence, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, well, I do feel slighted and I do want out, but also like this over here is telling me I'm never going to get my chance here anyway, so I may as well go, right? Like it's the emotional, and it's the emotional key to turn the logical lock, right? Like, oh, this thing I'm hearing and feeling now makes this that I wanted to do anyway make sense for me to do, instead of it being an irrational decision before. Right? Like before it would have just been like telling your boss I quit and storming off with having no backup plan and nothing, and you just screwed yourself and put yourself in a worse situation. Now it's like, oh,
all the coworkers also said, hey, you should probably go as well.
Yeah, right. Exactly. What do you mean they packed my stuff up for me? Like, like that's where we got, and that's why I think now, like, yeah, I mean, look, I was not ahead of this by any means, but I think this afternoon it became very clear very quickly what was going to happen. And then it was, 2 hours later, 3 hours later.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, I mentioned I said that on Monday in a space, but like even for me when I was watching that, like I didn't get that same feeling that you did specifically. Like it didn't all click for me at that point. So even I was a little bit I mean, I'm sure you were still like not expecting
I
this
was so
today.
surprised it happened this quickly. Yeah,
Right,
absolutely. Like, I mean, even if the Steelers had like if Omar picked up the phone and said, "Yeah, okay, we'll trade you," like, I figured it'd take a week or two. Like,
Sure.
So I was still, driving home from Penn State. Oh, I covered a pro day today. Are we going to talk about that? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I mean, we can, well, because I was going to ask if you have anything else on Pickett because right now, Alan, Russell Wilson's like Will Smith looking around in the house, looking at the quarterback room. Like, okay, yeah, Kenny Pickett's out. That's one part of the conversation. We don't have a backup quarterback right now. We don't have a third string quarterback right now. What are we doing?
Well, I think this now makes Justin Fields, a near
Back on the board, baby. It's like that meme where in The Simpsons throwing out the bar and then he's right back in.
Yes.
The idea of Justin Fields. We thought it like completely went away. There were still some national media heads I feel like talking about the idea of Justin Fields even and just like all three of them in one room, throw the football out onto the field, see who comes out on top. But realistically, that wasn't going to happen. Now it's a possibility again to trade for Justin Fields.
I would now call it what else are they going to do? Like, there's no, like, is there another player out there?
35-year-old Russell Wilson and 37-year-old Ryan Tannehill
to have any kind of upside that they could get or would be worth getting. Like, think about it. Like, Jones has been traded, Ritter's been traded, Howell's been traded. There's no other young quarterback where you're like, oh, well, this could be the guy that could maybe learn from. Like, where I can't
clearly. I don't know if I can take this erasure of Zach Wilson, Alan.
Oh, okay. Well, look, that's a legitimate other option. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a worse option, but it's a legitimate option. Okay.
Same draft class as Justin Fields. That's why he came to mind.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a worse option, but that is another option. But there are very, very few of those out there now. I mean, look at I guess, of the 300 stories that we now need to write at SteelersNow.com, that I'm sure Nick Faribaugh and Chris Ward and the gang are like cursing me under their breath as I talk about it on the podcast while those guys slave away right now. Like one of the things we're going to love to look at is like, oh, who's left at quarterback? And it's not pretty. Like there's not a whole heck of a lot out there. So if you sort the little free Tannehill, Jimmy G, right, Tyler Huntley, Josh Dobbs, Blaine Gabbert, Carson Wentz, Kyle Allen.
Nope. Okay, out of the names that we've mentioned, Justin Fields and then like Josh Dobbs and Tyler Huntley, kind of interesting for me. But like, and Tannehill makes sense, but like because of it being, he would have made more sense with Kenny, obviously, than with Russell Wilson for a guy that knows the system.
Yeah,
but like,
yeah, there's no upside in. I guess did the
But like if you're going, what a weird quarterback room. If you sign Tannehill, then that like locks in that you're going to draft a guy, right? Or like you need one young quarterback in this room as the third guy for sure.
Well, I guess they could do that, right? They could sign a veteran, another veteran backup, or like a not quite like, I don't know. Do you call Josh Dobbs a veteran? I mean, he's 29, but he's barely played. You could sign Josh Dobbs and then draft a quarterback, and then have the battle be for number 2. I suppose that could work. I wouldn't hate that idea.
No, I'm
in the draft. Look, I mean, I had some people talk to me on Twitter and they're like, oh, so they're going to trade up for a quarterback. There is no quarterback that they can trade up to get. They would have to trade every single draft pick they have this year, plus some of their next year's draft picks, to get JJ McCarthy, who is the 4th best of them. Like, those guys are all going in the top, certainly top 10, maybe top 8.
I'd say Minnesota getting that 2nd round pick today, I think increases the odds of 4 going high, even higher than we originally thought.
I mean, I've thought for a while now that JJ McCarthy is a top 10 pick and maybe a top, like I said, like 8 pick, 6 pick. like who are the trade down guys, that are, so, okay. I mean, 1, 2, 3 for sure, whether that third pick is New England actually taking Jaden Daniels or someone trading up there to take Jaden Daniels. 1, 2, 3, I think feel locked in. And then, Atlanta could, there's lots of Atlanta, Minnesota. There's definitely the Giants, even like they were talking to Russell Wilson, then did nothing else in free agency.
They brought in Drew Lock.
Oh, they did. Okay. That's right. Well, yeah, I mean,
but still, it sounds like quarterback is still on the table for them. That's
probably,
like a 1-year deal. And
yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a lot there that says that you're not getting one of those guys now, like Nix and Penix. I mean, the first round would be a massive overdraft. In the second, I guess
that's what I was going to say. Like, okay, say one of those guys falls into like that Levis-ish range of last year, where it's like he's still available on day 2, but like going from he got taken at 34, so like that jump up 17 spots in the second round, what that would cost them. I obviously don't want them to do it. I'm just saying, like,
I mean, I can't imagine anyone trading up to get one of those guys. They're horrible. I can't, like, they're not starting quarterbacks. They're just not. You have a better chance of getting a starting quarterback taking a swing on some athlete later, like Jordan Travis or Joe. I mean, Joe Mixon might be the least accurate quarterback I've ever seen, but like, the very least you can turn him into Taysom Hill. I don't know. Like there's I think there's Spencer Rattler. Like it's probably one of those guys now. But again, like they didn't send their top brass to Washington or Oregon. Like, so I don't, again, like this wasn't the plan. So I don't know, maybe there's an adjustment there, but I don't know what they're going to do. I think I feel like Fields, like if I was putting, and I'm sure that these are in my inbox if I check them, if I was putting betting odds on who the Steelers backup quarterback is going to be this year, I'm putting Justin Fields as the odds-on favorite right now. I got him at
okay.
plus.
So let me ask you this then: if that's the case, if they do acquire Justin Fields, is it just for this season, or do they pick up that 5th year upon acquiring?
Depends on how much they pay. And I think the right answer is to try to get him and do the Jordan Love contract, right? I mean, I think that's the right way to go about it. I don't know if Fields would be willing to do that. If he's not, then you can't give up much for him. But if you can trade your 4th, I think that becomes reasonable. Like Chicago doesn't have anywhere else to send him, so I can't imagine the asking price is going to be real high. I think they need to be able to make that happen. Maybe ship one of those extra 7th, so they got 4th and a 7th. I'd be making that phone call.
They did, even though they sent a 4th in that deal to Philly, they had 2 4ths, so they still have 119.
Yeah, so they still have a bunch of draft picks. Like, it's not like they're sure that all of their trades have been number of picks in 2024 neutral. They've moved around, but they haven't added or lost any.
Right. Yeah. Moved up from the 7th to the 6th in the Deontay Johnson trade, then moved up from the 4th to the 3rd in this one. And then obviously got the 2 7ths in 2025, but we're not talking about those at least right now. So I'm with you though. I think if I was a betting man, I am. Justin Fields feels like he's going to be the backup quarterback for the Steelers. And okay, let me ask you this then, and we'll wrap this up here. Say they do acquire Justin Fields. Do you see at all it being similarly to Kenny Pickett? Like, you felt it was going to be a competition, at least to some degree. Would Justin Fields have a shot to be the starter for the 2024 Steelers?
Yes. The Steelers have absolutely nothing invested in Russell Wilson. They're not just going to hand him their starting job. He was not, I mean, he was fine. He was good, but it's not like he was so good that they're just going to say, no competition. He's 1 year removed from being pretty mediocre like he was in 2022. And they're not just going to hand him this job with nothing tying them to him. If he's not good enough If he doesn't look good enough, he's not going to keep the job, especially if the other option is Justin Fields.
Do you think whether or not they pick up the 5th-year option would be an indication at all towards that, or no?
If they, I don't know. If they pick up the 5th-year option, I might say that Fields would be more likely to start than Wilson.
That was kind of the way I was like, you want to get a good look at him before he becomes the starter in 25.
If you pick up the 5th-year option, he's going to play 100%. I don't think they'll do that, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right, Alan. Great conversation as always. One that when we started the day, probably didn't anticipate we'd be having, at least for the most part. But Alan, tell the people where they can find you.
Saunders _PGH, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com, all kinds of stuff there. And I'm going to keep adding to it. So we get fired up.
I am excited based off what Friday brought us for what this weekend could possibly bring us for when we come back for Steelers Afternoon Drive on Monday. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Be sure to go read everything that's coming out at the site. There's a ton of stuff there already, and will be even more added to it throughout the day. Hit us in the comments with any thoughts that you have, any questions that you have for when we come back over the weekend. Leave us a 5-star review, as always, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in, taking another ride with us on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.